Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm back to bring you yet again another Discussion of the Week video segment right here on Otaku Assemble Weekly. As always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's Discussion of the Week video segments. And I'm back after my little brief 2-week hiatus, but the OAW upload schedule is back on track, and so here I am to bring you a fresh Discussion of the Week video segment. Now, before I jump into this week's topic, there is one thing I want to address about what occurred in the comment section of my Yu Yu Hakusho versus Rurouni Kenshin's video from last week, where I asked you all to leave your suggestions for this week's Discussion of the Week video segment. Now, this is what happened. I was asked by Vlad the Impaler 7 this. I was wondering if you could do a discussion, manga versus comics, since you're the only person in the anime community who does vids on both. I want to hear your opinion on this. And this was the suggestion that was thumbed up the most by you all, the viewers, subscribers, and the commenters. However, here is the problem. As I have mentioned in the comments on that video, which you all can check out, I asked for Vlad the Impaler 7 to be a little bit more specific on what exactly it was that he wanted me to touch on with that topic. This is the problem with the topic. I can't just do a comparison of manga versus comic books because I need a basis for the comparison. What am I comparing them to? I mean, am I comparing them on stories? Am I comparing them on artwork? Because the thing is, both of those have done great jobs with stories and artwork, and they've done horrible jobs with stories and artwork. So that's not a valid enough point to argue to develop any type of argument to compare, to sway said argument to one side or the other. I mean, if I'm just comparing the two based off of my personal preference, I mean, even that I don't think is a strong enough point to try and argue on. So what I'm saying is this. I would have liked to tackle that topic, but unfortunately it wasn't specific enough, and there wasn't a point, there wasn't enough to really argue a case trying to compare those two. That's all I'm saying. However, I did get a comment that I thought was a very good topic for discussion, and that's what this week's Discussion of the Week is based on. Now, this week's Discussion of the Week this comes from Fred the Pirate. Fred the Pirate says, "Hi Larry, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind doing a discussion on the sexualization of both male and female characters, but particularly female characters in Western comics. One, how do you feel about it as a whole, as both a fan and a writer? Two, do you think it's being overdone in comics? And lastly, do you think there is ever a way for sexualization of a character in Western comics to be done well?" So, Fred the Pirate, let me take this opportunity to thank you for the great topic. This is a topic that I have touched on briefly. If you all will remember my DC Comics rant, I touched on this topic very briefly when I was discussing what they were doing with Harley Quinn and her new character design in the new Batman books. So, okay, so I'm going to tackle this from the 3 questions that Fred posted. The first question being this: how do I feel about it as a whole, both as a fan and as a writer? Okay, this is how I feel about it. Now, I will agree that, oh, well, shit, hang on a minute. Okay, that's the second question. Okay, so how do I feel about sexualization in comic books, both as a fan and as a writer? As a fan, I do favor it. Why? Because it really does, what it does is it makes the material more mature. It a tad bit more realistic. I don't mean realistic as in the way in which it's presented, but I mean realistic in the sense that it actually does appear and that it actually does exist. I mean, sexuality is a huge part of the real world. So seeing that in the comic book medium, it makes it a bit more realistic in that aspect that it could possibly exist. And I'll just be honest with you all. As a fan, hell, if I see a hot character on the book, chances are I might pick it up. I mean, that I'm a guy. I like women. I like breasts. I like ass. This is just the way it works. That's me speaking solely as a fan, and that's me talking about just the first question, because the matter of which, is it being overdone? That's the second question, which I will get to in a minute. So as a fan, sexualization in comics, hell, why not? Like I said, I like hot chicks. I do. I do. Now, as a writer, I take the point of that in some cases it's necessary. And this is what I mean. Let's face it, whether you like it or not, you have to admit this to yourselves. Sex sells. It sells. That's the whole reason why comic book companies, why they will push these edgy, suggestive comic book covers. That's why some writers put it in their stories. Once again, sex sells. Now, as a writer, the reason why I said it's a necessity, number one, because at the end of the day, you have to make a profit. But number two, to tie into my whole opinion on sexualization in comics to begin with, is that, once again, it is a very realistic topic that, if incorporated in comic books, make the story a bit more mature, a bit more realistic. But that is an avenue in which you as a writer or as an artist, you can pursue. I mean, think about it. For those of you all who read Western comics, how many good stories have you read that have been created based off of some type of love triangle or some type of love affair? Now, I'm not saying that has to be depicted in a very sexualized way, but that is a sexual topic. And that provides the writer and the artist with an opportunity to create a story within said topic. You know, that it's kind of like think of it kind of like a new frontier, because for the most part, us growing up as kids, we got exposed to sexualization in comics, but we weren't really necessarily reading the mature comic books. So when you become an adult and you want to write or you want to draw comics, that's kind of like a new frontier for you. Why? Because the comics you grew up on didn't necessarily have that material, but you can write it now. So the appeal is there. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's my stake on sexualization in comics as both a fan and then as a writer. Now I'm going to get into the second question, which is, do you think it's being overdone in comics? Yes, abso-fucking-lutely. I think it's being overdone. I think it is being overdone. Like I said, I touched on this topic in my DC rant, but also this topic came back up when with one of the Otaku faithful, Rob, who I believe his username is Gamer. What is it? Is it Gamer026, I believe, or it's rgamer026. Anywho, Rob posted a link on the Otaku Assemble Facebook page where it was a news story on the criticism and the negative response to the sexualization in some of the New 52 DC books, and more specifically the Red Hood and the Outlaws book. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have heard about that controversy by now, where the character of Starfire was over-sexualized in that book. And that's a very good example of what I'm talking about. Like I said, as a fan, yes, you want to read stuff that is somewhat sexualized. As a writer, yes, you want to write stories that are somewhat sexualized. But this is when I think sexualization is being overdone. Okay, hear me now. It is okay to put sexualization in comics. The problem is, who is the targeted audience for your book? Because that was the whole issue that the news report was trying to tackle. It's one thing if it's for mature audiences, then it's all fine and dandy. But if you're targeting it towards children, that's when it becomes a problem. Now, some people would argue that, oh, Larry, you know, Red Hood and the Outlaws is a mature book. It's not targeted towards children. Okay. But if that is so, then why are the advertisements in the book targeted towards children? Why are the advertisements for action figures and cartoons and Ronald McDonald's advertisements and shit like that? That's for children. That's not for adults. So I have to question, if in fact it's meant for a mature audience, why are the advertisements targeted for children? That's when it becomes a problem. To use a good, you know what? Shit, how much time do I have? I'm gonna grab a book right quick that I think does a good job with sexualization. Hang on a minute. Where are ya? Okay, I just grabbed a bunch of fucking books, but I'm pretty much gonna like go through this list. Most of these are the same books, which is why I grabbed them, but I ended up grabbing a couple of other ones. Okay, Orchard by Dark Horse. This is a book I just recently got into, I want to say a couple of months ago. Now, Orchard is not over-sexualized, but it does have sexual themes. I mean, the main character, for all intents and purposes, was a prostitute. And this is just issue 1. I haven't read the others yet, so I don't know how far they actually push that theme. But I think, especially if this is meant to be targeted towards kids, which I don't know if it is, but if it is, I think this is appropriate sexualization. You don't see TNA, there is no nudity, but this is about as far as I would go. And when I say and let me correct myself right quick. When I say a children's book, what I'm talking about is this is like teenagers. If this book was intended for teenage readers, this is about as far as I would push it. Okay. But no, the example I wanted to pull was Witchblade, the Witchblade comics, which I have. I just went and grabbed a bunch of them. I have 3 of these. Now, Witchblade is kind of on the fence. Why? Because there are a lot of Witchblade books that are intended for mature audiences. But the same thing with Witchblade, I think this is probably intended more for like the teenage audience. But this is what I mean. Witchblade has a bunch of scantily clad women. But like I said, well, hang on a minute. I'm just reading some of the dialogue, you know, like this is a sex scene that's in the book. But once again, no nudity, and the dialogue isn't vulgar. It's suggestive. This is what I think is good sexualization. I think the Witchblade comics, for the most part, tend to do sexualization well, or at least in this one they do. But what DC is doing and what Marvel's doing with their over-sexualization of those characters, that doesn't fly. Keep in mind, now I want you all to keep something in mind. Orchard and Witchblade, these aren't superhero comic books. So once again, the problem comes into play. If you're going to put sexualization in superhero comics, who's the audience? If you're targeting it towards children, then no, that doesn't fly. That's over-sexualization. Most of the time when they do it, I'm talking about the big 2, which is DC and Marvel. Most of the time when they do over-sexualization in their comic books, in the superhero comic books intended for children readers, they do it just to pander. They do it for shock value, and they do it to intrigue the young male readers. And I'm talking about the prepubescent male readers who, for all intents and purposes, this is like the first TNA they've ever seen. That is sexualization done the wrong way. Now, for the sake of wrapping up this video, let's go ahead and let's jump into the last question, which is, do you think there is ever a way for sexualization of a character in Western comics to be done well? Which technically I just answered, because Witchblade, I think, does it well. And Orchard, I think, does it well. But keep in mind, this is only based off of Orchard issue 1 because I haven't continued reading it yet. So, yes, these are examples where I think sexualization for a character is done well. Other examples would include Catwoman. Mostly, I want to say early to mid 90s Catwoman, which I'm talking about like 92 to 96, 97. Same thing. A very sexual character, but the dialogue was suggestive. There was never any nudity. That was done well. Same thing goes for Black Cat in Marvel Comics. That was done well. Poison Ivy. That was done well. So there are ways to do it. It has been done before. What DC and Marvel are doing now, mainly DC with that New 52, that's bullshit. That's not cutting it. Like I said, to wrap up this video, I'm going to repeat this point once again. Sexualization in comic books is not bad, but it depends on who you're targeting it for. If you're targeting it for children and you have shit like what's in Red Hood and the Outlaws, that's bad. That don't fly. So yeah. But with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. Once again, I want to thank Fred the Pirate for the great suggestion. This really could have been a longer video, but hell, I'm already pushing 20 minutes, so you guys are good. But as always, in the comments below, drop suggestions for next week's discussion of the week video segment. Stay tuned because I have anime favorites for February 2012, Outlaw Star, and finally, I have Comic Book Hollywood, Superman Doomsday, my review of that film. So, till next time, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. That's my alarm, and I'm signing off. Later.